Now, Mr. Hatanaka, I believe you recently went on a long business trip that, went on for 23 days to the Arab region. Rising crude oil prices are now a matter of grave international concern. Specifically, could you tell me which countries you went to this time?
Yes, this time I have visited several countries in the Gulf region and North Africa, and have met officials and energy and economic experts from Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Libya, and so on.
And, these people of the oil industry that you met during your recent trip, could you tell me what these experts had to say on the rising crude oil prices?
They were seriously worrying about the current level of high crude oil price and its effect on the world economy. But at the same time, they were saying that the current level of crude oil price was not caused by their policy. It means by the oil producing country's policy itself, because there were enough crude oil in the market even today. And it was clearly shown in the statistics that the crude oil supply is bigger than that of demand so far. Although demand in emerging countries, such as, for example, Asia, China, India, has been increasing dramatically. Mm-hmm. And then they have pointed out that today's high price level was caused by mainly non-fundamental reasons, starting from geopolitical uncertainties in some of the producing countries, such as Iraq, Iran, Nigeria, Venezuela, and lack of American refining capacity problems, which means that they don't have enough capacity to produce all the products from crude oil, and speculative money into the future oil market and so on. So they told me clearly that it was beyond their control, and unfortunately, crude oil price will remain at high level for at least the next few years or so, until enough crude oil production capacity and sufficient refining capacity will be recovered.
Mr. Hatanaka, you yourself are an expert in this field. Could you give us your view of the situation?
First of all, I myself have the same opinion with them. I would consider that the high level of price will remain at least for the next few years or so. I would expect that average WTI crude oil price will remain in the $60s per barrel, and will even go up to beyond the $80 per barrel in case political tension, such as Iran nuclear development issue between Iran and the States, will flare up or increase dramatically. And secondly, I would consider that we are now in the process of, or in the period of testing economical viability of what they call non-conventional oil, tar sands, heavy oil, ethanol-blended oil products, GTL, that is to say gas to liquid, shale oil, and so on, by major oil companies in the West. I would say that high level of price is needed to support and to sustain the usage of these non-conventional oil. It is estimated that economically viable price is around $40 per barrel for tar sands, Brazilian cane-based ethanol and GTL, $50 per barrel for shale oil, and $60 per barrel for U.S. corn-based ethanol. Major oil companies in the States and Europe have been trying to persuade Middle East oil-producing countries to open their upstream oil sector for foreign companies' exploration and development, with the purpose of increasing the world crude oil supply capacity. But unfortunately, most were not allowed to enter into the market with the favorable conditions. Therefore, major oil companies nowadays are currently facing the difficulty of replacing oil and gas reserves that they have used. So they are now trying to find a new oil and gas opportunity in the area, such as West Africa and so on. But exploration and the development costs in those countries are relatively high. So they are at the same time trying to develop the usage of non-conventional oil. To my understanding, high level of crude oil price will continue until either these companies will eventually have enough volume of non-conventional oil, or Middle Eastern countries will reopen their upstream sector to avoid a large usage of these non-conventional oil by those companies.
Well, of course, Japan is very dependent on oil from overseas, and recently, starting in May, gasoline prices have risen dramatically here. This rise, you say, will probably continue for a long period of time. Now, how will this affect the Japanese economy?
On Japan's economy, if the current level of crude oil price will continue for the next 12 months or so, but impact itself will not be so big from the macroeconomic viewpoint due to the following reasons. We experienced the highest oil product price in the late 1970s and early 80s after the second oil crisis. For example, oil product price at that time was 177 yen per liter. But the price would become higher to 224 yen at today's price, after adjusted by strong yen and inflation. But today's oil product price is only about 135 yen, although it has risen from almost 105 yen. It means we are still enjoying 40% cheaper oil products in Japan. And I have also to point out that, for example, gasoline consuming ratio to GDP has been declined from 2.4% to 1.5% in the last 30 years. So we can say that Japan's economic resisting power to high oil price has strengthened dramatically. So of course, as you have mentioned, this high level of crude oil price will have impact on Japan's economy, but not as much big as we have expected now.
So not so much as we saw back in the 70s with the oil shock back then.
That's right.
Well, the price range is, I'm sure, a matter of concern for the consumers. But what price range do you see as tolerable for both Japan and also the international economy?
It is widely believed that spot crude oil price of $40, which is the highest in the history per barrel in the year 1980, is equivalent to $92 per barrel at today's price after adjusting inflation during the period. Therefore, theoretically speaking, we still have some rooms. I would say upper limit of crude oil price that will have not any big impact on the world economy is around $80 per barrel or so.
Now, at the end, I'd like to hear what other concerns we should be aware of at this time and what must be done to overcome this entire situation.
The most dangerous factor for crude oil price in the near term is, as you know, Iranian nuclear issue. International community must work together to solve the problem issue through diplomacy and urge both Iran and the state to settle the issue by dialogue and negotiation. Then the issue of, as I mentioned to you, expanding crude oil production capacity and refining capacity in the States. We have to let big oil producing countries, particularly in the Middle Eastern countries, to open their upstream sector to foreign companies, and at the same time to let Western major oil companies to invest more in downstream sector, particularly in the States, to solve the supply bottlenecks. I would also suggest that to give safe energy methods to China and India will be also useful in checking strong energy demands in those countries.
Well, Mr. Hatanaka, thank you very much for your expertise. I believe you will again be on a business trip concerning these matters. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You're welcome.